Welcome to Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio with author, speaker, and your host, Pat Rouleau.
Serving you a generous helping of everything you need to know to help you and your loved ones stay safe during any doctor or hospital visit.
The program is not intended to replace medical advice from a licensed professional, but rather to encourage you to become a well-informed participant in your health and well-being. And now, your host, Pat Rouleau.
So what we're seeing is actually some drugs that are going to be coming onto the market really boost brain performance. And that brings up a whole range of ethical questions. You know, if some people in the office are using them, what about others? Are others going to be left behind? Should that be legal? What about kids in colleges? We know that there's a problem with students taking Ritalin and Adderall to study more. So what about these other cognitive enhancers? And what does that do to the playing field?
Hello, I'm Pat Rouleau, your hostess with the mostest to say about anything and everything that affects your health, your safety during every healthcare or hospital encounter. And today, I'm pulling out my old magic 8-ball to take a peek into the future of healthcare, where we might be headed and why. Later in the show, I have a guest whose job is to project the future when it comes to trends as a way to help his clients set a course for their businesses. And we're going to focus specifically on the future of healthcare. Now, to me, you cannot simply focus on the future of healthcare without focusing first on the future of our health. What's going on right now that will impact our future health and therefore impact healthcare? That is my question. I'm going to, right now, share some bizarre current happenings that surely have or will have an impact on our health and therefore on healthcare. So with that, it's time for the healthcare hazards of the week. Magic 8-ball. Do you have the answers to my most pressing future of health and healthcare questions? Oh no, it says concentrate and ask again. Okay, Magic 8-ball. Do you have the answers to my most pressing future of health and healthcare questions? Oh, Outlook, not so good. Well, I don't need my magic 8-ball to tell me that, because I have several bits of weirdness to share with you. The first, from Natural Society website, titled Kellogg's Cereals, Double Dose of GMO Pesticides and Antibiotics. Kellogg's Cereals Loaded with Pesticides and GMOs, written by Christina Sarek. There is good reason that Kellogg spent well over $1 million on media propaganda in California and Washington to defeat voter ballot initiatives that would have required the labeling of GMO foods, and now are contributing again to the defeat of labeling initiatives in Oregon, contributing $250,000. A consumer recently sent a box of Fruit Loops to a lab for genetic testing and found that the corn and soy used in the cereal are 100% Roundup Ready genetically modified organisms. And just by the way, Monsanto's Roundup is the trade name for the herbicide glyphosate that causes birth defects and cancer and probably triggers a host of chronic diseases. The sugar is also Roundup. Never mind the other toxic ingredients in the cereal. This means that in one box of Kellogg's cereal, and likely all their cereals contain similar GMO products, you are dining on a double dose of glyphosate and Bt toxins. Glyphosate's being patented as an antibiotic by Monsanto in 2011. Not only is the corn and Fruit Loops sprayed with Roundup, but it is a pesticide in its own right, registered with and regulated by the EPA. But it isn't just Fruit Loops that is of concern for all of you who avoid sugar-laden cereals. The healthful Kellogg's brands are full of the fun stuff too. Kellogg's claims that even though they don't use genetically engineered ingredients in Europe, In the United States, consumer concerns about the usage of biotech ingredients in food production are low. Kashi, Bare Naked, Morningstar Farms, and Garden Burger, all brands you probably have been relying on as healthful foods to feed your family, are also contaminated. Kellogg's has promised to change the labeling on their Kashi brands, but they also promised that their products had hardly any GMOs in them in the first place. Kellogg's is feeding children pesticides and antibiotics without their parents' knowledge or consent. You can bet that the vigorous testing of their products is a lie, too. They told us that all these brands were verified as non-GMO. Goleen Crunch with the honey almond flax, Goleen Crisp Cinnamon Crumble, Goleen Crisp Toasted Berry Crumble, Autumn Wheat, Cinnamon Harvest, Island Vanilla, Strawberry Fields, Raisin Vineyard, Simply Mazed, Indigo Morning, Berry Fruitful, 7 whole grain flakes and puffs and peel-off. The truth? Kashi lied. Cornucopia Institute tested Kashi's Goleen cereal and found it to contain 100% genetically engineered soy. The company's response? Just get used to GMO contamination. In response to the question, do you use GMO ingredients? Kashi said, quote, factors such as pollen drift from nearby crops and current practices in agricultural storage, handling, and shipping has led to an environment in North America where GMOs are not sufficiently segregated. As a result, some of our foods include ingredients made from genetically engineered crops. And yes, Kashi was purchased by Kellogg's in 2000. I bet you didn't know that. And in 2007, Bare Naked was purchased by Kashi. Well, so much for my 2 favorite breakfast cereals. Right now on my desk, I am looking at 2 boxes of Kashi cereals. On the front left-hand corner is a picture of a monarch-looking butterfly and a green check mark with the words Non-GMO Project Verified and the website address nongmoproject.org. Now, to the average person, this would indicate that each and every morsel in the box is not genetically modified. Deception at its finest. At a quick glance, you are led to believe that it says non-GMO, when in fact the words non-GMO are in bright white letters, and in smaller, non-bold letters is the word project. The word verified is quite large too. So to a hurried shopper, you read non-GMO verified. Your eyes hardly notice the word project, whatever in the heck that means. But for those box readers, on the back of the Raisin Vineyard box it says, quote, at Kashi, we commit to increasing our use of organic and non-GMO project verified foods over time. Unquote. Well, let's talk about those words. We commit to increasing, which really means, but not in this box, sucker. And we commit to increasing over time. Over time? How much time? A big lie on the front of the box and a little purple script type of small font on the back, basically canceling the lie on the front. Then, on the Kashi Goleen Crunch box, the back of the statement says, quote, at Kashi, we're committed to increased usage of organic and non-GMO project verified foods. We're on track to our goal of more than half of our food being non-GMO project verified by the end of 2015 based on pounds. But once again, but not in this box, sucker. And neither box mentions Kellogg's ownership. So guess what? Both boxes are now being tossed in the trash, and I will never buy another lying box of cereal again. You can boycott Kellogg's too. Petition them or call them at 1-800-962-1413. 1-800-962-1413. And I suggest that you make it very clear that you won't be eating their poison products any longer. Enough is enough. Oh, and I checked, and here's what General Mills has to say. Quote, because U.S. farmers use genetically modified seed to grow certain crops, 70% of foods on the U.S. grocery shelves likely contain GMO ingredients. As a result, if an American food or beverage product lists corn, soy, canola, cottonseed, or beet sugar as an ingredient, and if it's not organic, it likely contains GMOs. And note, General Mills has spent over $3.6 million to fight genetically modified labeling initiatives in the United States. Then I ventured over to Quaker, and they say, quote, "We do not require or exclude the use of these ingredients, so we don't require our suppliers to provide this information. As a result, we cannot give you a definitive yes or no answer. That said, we're glad for the chance to provide some clarification about genetically modified ingredients. When it comes to safety, the FDA has determined that foods developed through this process are no different than foods developed by traditional plant breeding. And in fact, they conclude that these genetically modified foods don't differ from any other foods in any meaningful way. And finally, all of our products worldwide comply with all applicable food laws and labeling requirements. Quaker relies on and supports the regulatory agencies charged with safeguarding our food supply when sourcing ingredients for our products." Yet note, people, Quaker's parent company is PepsiCo and has spent over $8.8 million to fight GMO labeling initiatives in the United States. I think this says it all when it comes to the future of healthcare. Despite what you hear by those who either prefer not to know or those who make their living based upon lies, our population will not be living longer. We cannot possibly eat Roundup, pesticides, and thrive. And you don't have to be a genius or resurrect your magic 8-ball to figure that out. Next, from Natural News. Just 6 corporations control the flow of scientific information, a new study in Canada reveals. Since the 1970s, scientific journals have been controlled by the same few companies. Researchers looked at scientific literature published between 1973 and 2013 and found that the companies ACS, Reed Elsevier, Sage, Taylor and Francis, Springer, Wiley Blackwell controlled nearly every single one. Many small publishers have been absorbed into larger ones, for instance, and academic research groups have become increasingly beholden to the interests of these major publishers, which tend to favor large industries like pharmaceuticals and vaccines. Much of the independence that was once cherished within the scientific community has gone by the wayside, as these major publishers have taken control and now dictate what types of content get published. The result is a publishing oligopoly in which scientists are muzzled by an overarching trend toward politically correct and industry-favoring so-called science. In other words, don't blindly believe what you hear and read, as now you know that a handful of for-profit companies control the scientific literature that gets published. And we know that most studies are funded by those who have a vested interest in the outcome. They skew the results to get published in the accepted journals, and all of that mumbo gets regurgitated by the mindless bought and sold media. Here's another wild one for you. Would you pay Microsoft to spy on you? Well, if you install Windows 10 as an update on your computer, that is exactly what you are doing. When you click the little box that says you agree to Microsoft's terms and conditions prior to the free download, what you are really consenting to is that you agree to being spied on through malware. It is placed on your computer through the update, and then it leaves you helpless against spying through your keystrokes, your camera, and the websites you visit. That's right, folks. The Windows 10 technical preview does have the ability to collect more than you'd expect from the average Windows operating system. In the technical preview's privacy statements, it states, when you acquire, install, and use the program, Microsoft collects information about you, your devices, applications, and networks, and your use of those devices, applications, and networks. Examples of data we collect include your name, email address, preferences and interests, browsing, search and file history, phone call and SMS data, device configuration and sensor data, and application use. For example, when you install the program, We may collect information about your devices and applications and use it for purposes such as determining or improving compatibility. We may collect voice information and use it for purposes such as improving speech processing. We may open a file. We may collect information about the file, the application used to open the file, and how long it takes any use for its purposes such as improving performance. Or we may collect typed characters and use them for purposes such as improving autocomplete and spell check features. Oh, all under the guise of enhancing your experience. There was outrage when Microsoft updated a privacy statement shortly after Windows 10 launched, saying it can collect users' information from private emails, address books, and other files. And within 45 pages of terms and conditions, the privacy information suggests Microsoft begins watching from when an account is created, saving consumers basic information, password, and credit card details, as reported by Newsweek. And in June of this year, news broke that Google has been stealth downloading audio listeners onto every computer that runs Chrome, and then it transmits audio data back to Google. Effectively, this means that Google has taken itself the right to listen to every conversation in every room that runs Chrome, without any kind of consent from the people eavesdropped upon. In official statements, Google shrugged off the practice with what amounts to, quote, "We can do that." And I say, it's worth knowing what you're signing up for. I mean, should we really give ourselves and our privacy to corporations like Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook? What does this have to do with the future of healthcare? Imagine having every internet search forwarded to your health insurer. Google the words heart attack or stroke, and now you are a suspect. Can you imagine that your medical files stored on your hard drive can be accessed and sent off to who knows who? Can you imagine that every conversation you have in your office or bedroom is being captured and can be used against you? That the distribution of your medical data could affect your health insurance, your ability to get life insurance or employment, or that it could result in your being discriminated against in a variety of other ways? Technology is great, but it's going too far, especially without our informed consent. And here's a winner from the website mic.com. The Department of Defense wants to use science to make soldiers literally fearless, in an article by Max Planck. He writes, flying 30,000 feet over enemy territory, a cadre of troops prepares to free fall until the last possible moment in order to avoid detection. On the ground, they'll need to move silently to rescue a captured soldier. Tension is high, so as they're given a signal to prepare to jump, each soldier adjusts a dial that controls their nervous system, triggering a sudden drop in adrenaline. In a moment, their anxiety, their fear is gone, and then they leap. This isn't a real scenario, yet. But just recently, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, known as DARPA, which is part of the government's BRAIN program, they held a Biology is Technology conference to share their ideas with biotechnology labs. A great idea of theirs is to control human fear and anxiety through bioelectric medicine or tools to directly communicate with and deliver information to the nervous system. This would help them make American soldiers into more efficient killing machines. Being able to manipulate our body's complicated circuitry would mean being able to manually lower blood pressure, reclaim the use of paralyzed muscles, moderate responses to infectious disease, and even control adrenaline response, which could both do away with anxiety medications and curb our own fear response. Tiny electronic implants that interface directly with your nervous system and can directly control and regulate many different diseases and chronic conditions such as arthritis, post-traumatic stress disorder, Crohn's disease, and depression. The program is called Electrics, that ultimately aims to replace medication with closed-loop neural implants, which constantly assess the state of your health and then provide the necessary nerve stimulation to keep your various organs and biological systems functioning properly. The work is primarily being carried out with U.S. soldiers, as I mentioned, and veterans in mind, But the technology will certainly percolate down to civilians as well. Examples are cochlear implants, which restore hearing by directly modulating your brain's auditory nerve system, which appears to be capable of curing and regulating various conditions such as depression and Parkinson's, by overriding erroneous neural spikes with regulated healthy stimulation. Now, I guess there are positive applications, but the dark side of this is ugly. Under the guise of treating diseases and depression without medication, DARPA's tiny implants will hook directly into your nervous system. And then what? Perhaps activate all kinds of weirdness directly from your smartphone? Ah, yes, technology is revolutionizing healthcare so that we become unrecognizable as humans, programmed to deliver what the powers that be deem necessary. Next of interest, new wireless technology to medicate the population. Posted by Allison Reed, staff writer in Drug Dangers, July 22, 2015, from Natural Health 365. It says, Americans have a multi-billion-dollar drug problem, and it is completely legal. In fact, the biggest drug problem in the United States is not illicit drugs, but rather one that is both supported and financed by our country's biggest companies and leaders: our overwhelming dependence on prescription medications. Unfortunately, America's prescription drug epidemic is only expected to grow larger, and Big Pharma could not be happier about it. Over the past 2 decades, pharmaceutical companies have been highly successful increasing the American reliance on prescription drugs. One company, however, has focused less on drug development and more on accessibility. Its new product, microchip drug delivery, takes advantage of wireless technology to provide automatic drug administration, essentially making it easier to mindlessly drug the population than it ever has been before. Can you imagine wireless technology delivering drugs to the population? Microchips Biotech claims that its product is on the convergence of drug delivery and electronic technologies and is designed to help doctors keep up with their patients' health in real time. It makes it possible to automatically administer medication either via wireless technology or by pre-programmed scheduling. The company claims it will help patients who have difficulty remembering to take medications at the same time each day or who are burdened by frequent or daily self-injections. Medical microchips can be inserted into a patient's arm, abdomen, or buttocks during a routine office visit. Each microchip contains hundreds of reservoirs, each of which can hold 1 milligram of medication. And when activated, the reservoirs release medications automatically with the help of internal sensors. Big Pharma stands to profit from microchip drug administration. And obviously, the application for this type of technologies are endless, and that has Big Pharma seeing dollar signs. Microchips Biotech is now partnering with other companies and organizations to make this technology more mainstream. Just recently, the company announced a $35 million partnership with an Israeli pharmaceutical company, Teva. It also hired a new CEO who has made it her mission to utilize microchips for birth control purposes in the United States and around the world. Well, now that Big Pharma is basically putting the pharmacy inside of us, there is no doubt that this type of technology will be passed off as beneficial and even revolutionary for patients. After all, Americans medicate themselves more than any other developed country in the world. According to a 2013 research from the Mayo Clinic, more than 70% of all Americans take at least one prescription drug and 20% take 5 or more. Medications run the gamut from birth control and antidepressants to painkillers and medicines used to manage chronic conditions such as heart disease and diabetes. Microchips Biotech has already confirmed plans to explore applications of its technology for many of these medications, implying that they have only scratched the surface of their plans to keep the population drug dependent. Now, am I crazy? Or are we better off without Big Pharma? If these drugs work so well and are so accessible, it would only make sense that the country with the greatest prescription drug consumption would also have the longest life expectancy on Earth. Yet, the CIA does not even rank the U.S. among the top 20 nations for longevity. In fact, the United States comes in at number 42, just barely edging out countries like Kuwait, Cuba, and Chile. The truth is, we are not any healthier than countries that are less dependent on medications. We are sicker. The key to health and longevity cannot be found in a test tube or a clinical trial. And contrary to what Western medicine would have us believe, there are no shortcuts to better health. We, as concerned citizens, need to wake up to the colossal schemes of money-hungry companies and shady government organizations before it's too late. And this, my friends, is just a fraction of what I could have talked about today. And I didn't even mention being sprayed on purpose by chemtrails. You know, those white spaghetti lines in the sky that are loaded with heavy metals that we ingest and breathe. I didn't even mention all of the moral, ethical, and legal ramifications that should be part of any conversation that attempts to alter what occurs naturally, either in the environment or within our bodies. The future of healthcare depends upon the future of our environment. The future of healthcare depends upon the future of our health. The future of healthcare is not some standalone concept that exists in a vacuum, tickled by ever-increasing technological possibilities. We are killing ourselves. We are being killed in plain sight, bite by bite, breath by breath, and our silence grants permission. We willingly become participants, subjects of huge experiments without our informed consent. I think we've been programmed to ignore our own sense of reason in exchange for the official narrative. And that's insane. So my last question for the Magic 8 Ball. Magic 8 Ball, will people wake up to the facts that we are on the way to extinction due to corporate greed? That we'd better do something about it now or else there will be no future? Not for healthcare and not for us? What say you, Magic 8 Ball? Reply hazy. Try again. Oh. And with that, let's hear some legal news you can use. You've heard me talk about my attorney friends at Schraff & King, and I know many of you have taken my advice and contacted them to help you with your advance directives. Things like a healthcare power of attorney, living will, help with information about the Do Not Resuscitate form, and more. But today I want to share with you something that really underscores just why I suggest that you work with the folks at Schraff & King and why they are on this program. Schraff & King are one of only a few practices within the state of Ohio that actually have a certified elder law attorney within their group. Attorneys certified in elder law offer you something that other attorneys do not. So don't go anywhere else. Contact the folks at Schraff & King today. 440-585-1600. That's 440-585-1600. Or visit them online at schraffking.com. And be sure to let them know that you heard about them here on Speak Up and Stay Alive. Again, it's 440-585-1600. 440-585-1600. Call them today. You are listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive, Patient Safety Radio, and I am your hostess, Pat Rulo, author of the book, Speak Up and Stay Alive, The Patient Advocate Hospital Survival Guide. And one thing we've figured out, and you don't need a crystal ball to tell you this, that any encounter with the healthcare system has the potential. It has the potential to cause further harm. So it's important to enter with your eyes and ears open, with some knowledge, and with the intent to ask questions and speak up. And that is what this radio program is all about, to lay the framework and to give you the tools to survive any and every healthcare and hospital encounter. So with that promise in mind, you know that we search the world for guests who have something to share that can assist with that purpose. And I mentioned a crystal ball just a few moments ago. Wouldn't it be helpful to see into the future when it comes to predicting how healthcare might look, say maybe 5, 10, or even 20 years from now, so that we might prepare? Well, today I have someone right here who can help with that. He is Michael Vidikin, founder and president of Future in Focus, a strategic foresight and consulting firm that helps companies see years or even decades into the future to help make better long-term decisions today. Michael is a graduate of the MBA program at the George Washington University, where he also received his undergraduate degree in business and psychology. Now, when he's not focusing on the future, you can find him experimenting in the kitchen, testing out the latest interactive gaming technologies, or volunteering in his community and raising money for Movember, a global organization committed to changing the face of men's health. So, with that and more, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Pat, and what a great introduction. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you are welcome. So now your company, Future in Focus, you use trend spotting and forecasting as a way to help your clients develop their strategic plans. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about looking forward to figure out what might be coming our direction as a way to prepare and maybe stay out of trouble or maybe take advantage of what's coming. So with that in mind, what do you see as the future of healthcare in the United States?
It's a tough question because there are really a lot of aspects for the healthcare industry, the hospitals, insurance providers, the medical networks. I see a lot of challenges for them, and that's because there's so much regulation and government involvement in the healthcare system, and as a result, there's so much administrative overhead. That's led to a wave of hospital consolidation as they try to get bigger to deal with the costs. There was a survey by the Physicians Foundation that said 77% of physicians are pessimistic about the future of medicine, and many of the physicians who are independent are leaving their practices to go join the hospitals. And so the industry itself is actually facing a lot of challenges for how to deal with systemic issues. But where I think there are going to be really positive outcomes are where consumers become empowered by technology to improve their own lives. The consumer, in a few years, these things are going to start coming out in 2016, 2017, and you will literally have a kit that you can test yourself at home. You don't have to make a doctor's appointment to go see if you're sick. You just, take the test strip, put it in your mouth. There's urinalysis, blood analysis, and saliva analysis in these kits. And so you do your little analysis at home, see what your diagnosis is, and then if you need to, you'll be able to contact your doctor maybe by telemedicine, so you don't even have to go into the office. You just talk to them on the phone or maybe do something like FaceTime. They can confirm the diagnosis from the results on the kit and then prescribe you medicine right there and then. Maybe at some point they'll allow even Amazon drones to deliver them, so you can have your prescription delivered to you at home. And you can just think about how many people won't get their office mates sick. Think about the time that patients will have saved. Really just understanding the state of their health and not having to make those appointments to go in when they're not sure if they're actually sick or not. There's really going to be a big movement towards solutions where the home becomes sort of the center of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some costs associated with it, but, consumers are willing to spend and invest in appliances that make their lives better and healthier, and so you might have some really great technologies come to the fore and have a family able to test and diagnose and treat themselves really from home.
I interviewed somebody about pharmacogenetics, where folks can then test their blood, their DNA, send that to get analyzed, and then that way they know better what drugs would be more effective to take, what wouldn't work.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. It made me think. So when I got married, my wife and I did 23andMe.
Yes.
It's really an inexpensive kit. I think it's $99 a person you send away. And then they give you sort of the information we were looking for to understand if we were going to pass on any genetic defects to children. But it went way beyond that. It gave us information about sensitivities to things like blood thinners and our likelihood of developing diabetes or obesity, sensitivities to other types of medicines. This is really where we're going, and DNA sequencing is getting cheaper and cheaper by the day. Some actually forecast that in the next 10 to 20 years, it's only going to be pennies for these tests.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody will be able to test their DNA. And I think prevention and proactive methods are really where the healthcare system is going. And I don't know if it's the healthcare industry that's actually going to move this way, but consumers want to be proactive. They want to know what steps they can take to make their lives healthier.
That's what our whole program is about, is being empowered and understanding your body, your symptoms, your diagnosis, and not just going in and hoping somebody else will pick up the ball for you. The system is so fragmented and stretched that the possibility of that happening accurately is not always there. 3D printing, we did a couple segments on that in the past. I mean, that's really coming along right now, as printing livers and other organs. Is that where we're headed?
It is. I think that right now we're at an early stage where they've printed bladders, so they create a scaffold and they're able to put the cellular material around the scaffold and essentially print a brand new bladder. Now that's a simple organ. There's not a lot of complexity to it, and they have implanted those into humans, and there was no rejection. They worked perfectly. In the future, we're looking at being able to print food for astronauts in space, for example, being able to print a pizza, using different inputs to actually print drugs. So you'll be able to use various chemicals and mix them together and print exactly the drug that you need. So a pharmacy might actually just be able to print the pharmaceuticals right there and then on demand, instead of having them delivered through this sort of long chain of custody.
Wow. It raises some other questions as well. So now we've printed all of these organs, and people who probably would have died had they not had these organs. Now we're going to have more and more people living. They're going to be living longer. That's going to be stressing the healthcare system even further. So we've created that problem. Now we've got all these people living longer. Now what do we do with them?
You nailed it. And it's going to impact the financial industry. It's going to impact insurance industries, investments. Look at Social Security and Medicare. I mean, what do we do when somebody's been on it for 70 years?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about people living until 150 or longer.
Now, I'm going to look at another side of that. But if you look at what's going on with our genetically modified foods that are unhealthy, basically we're eating Roundup, and the chemtrailings that are going on in the wireless radiation that's given off by all of the wireless devices that everyone is using, which is known to cause health problems, what we're doing to our environment is not helping.
It's interesting. There are a lot of people that think that technology will actually help the environment. For example, if you look at several studies, they say that our air and water quality in the United States are better now than at any time in the past. So even with all of the problems that we have, we're still cleaning up the cities.
I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to let that one lie, because I still ponder that all the time when I see the chemicals being spewed from the chemtrails. I'm like, all right, we're being blasted with aluminum and barium and strontium and all this other stuff that our bodies are not meant to absorb, and it's affecting our soil too. That's still a head scratcher for me. So, any other surprises or game changers that you see coming down the pike that we should be aware of?
One really interesting one are cognitive pharmaceutical enhancements. So pharmaceuticals like Provigil that give people a brain boost. There's a guy who runs a company called Bulletproof Coffee.
Ooh.
And he's all about healthy eating, and it's biohacking, basically trying to improve your body, really optimize your body's health. And so what we're seeing is actually some drugs that are going to be coming onto the market to really boost brain performance. And that brings up a whole range of ethical questions. If some people in the office are using them ahead, what about others? Are others going to be left behind? Should that be legal? What about kids in colleges? We know that there's a problem with students taking Ritalin and Adderall to study more. So what about these other cognitive enhancers? Mm-hmm. And what does that do to the playing field?
Kind of like steroids in athletes.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, in sort of the athlete realm, if you take a look at things like bionics, the best example are maybe prosthetics that some people have. I can't remember his name. In South Africa, the Blade Runner, right? He had prosthetic limbs, and you have potential for really bionic parts. Mm-hmm. And at some point, people will maybe trade in their human limbs for, bionic limbs.
Interesting.
Possible, the $6 million man.
Yeah.
Things like visual implants. You might go in for LASIK surgery, and they might ask you, would you like the night vision upgrade? Mm-hmm. And they'll give you some sort of enhancement to let you now see at night better.
Like an infrared, you could see through people's homes, right?
Exactly, exactly. And these will have interesting implications. There's also augmented reality. So Google Glass. So there'll be contact lenses for augmented reality. So you'll be able to see a digital overlay as you walk around and you look at things. This is a totally different area, but it has implications for health because it could be monitoring your activities and just the way that you see a computer screen. You might have a tracker in sort of like the upper left-hand quadrant that lets you know how many steps you're taking, how many calories you're eating, gives you kind of an alert signal when you're about to eat ice cream and you've already exceeded your calorie allotment, and so it kind of reminds you and it persuades you not to do something. Or, maybe your insurance company gets a notification that you're about to go skydiving, and they send you an alert that they're going to rescind your policy.
Oh, my.
I mean, that's the dark side.
It's like the whole surveillance side of it all, right?
Yeah, the tracking of your activities. Oh. We're going to be generating a lot of data about our activities, about what we're doing. Somebody has developed a smart plate that has cameras and sensors that weigh the food that's on your plate, and it's able to take pictures and match it up to a database, and it can match up what the food on your plate is, match the weight, and estimate the number of calories. So for a dieter to get really good info on how much they're eating, at the same time, maybe the last 5 years of what you've been eating has just been hacked, and I don't know how that impacts insurance or what happens when that gets out there, but it's really all of this different type of, there's a lot of different types of information that we'll be generating that can potentially help us get healthier.
We were talking about eye tracking. I remember reading about, I don't remember where it was, but the Pizza Hut had a specific menu that had an eye tracking device on it where it could watch where people's eyes scan. So I guess when the wait person came along, they said, I see you want the double stuffed crust with double meat and pepperoni. So, I mean, that's already out there where they're tracking eye movements. Now, granted, that could be very beneficial to someone who has a speech problem. Mm-hmm. And, can't speak, and then you would be able to use this eye tracking device and at least be able to communicate with that person.
Yeah, are you familiar with, there is a technology, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it was developed in Israel to help the disabled.
Yes.
And the person will look at a chart and essentially spell out words by looking at it.
I read that.
And that technology is now being used in the new BMW to do, for basically controlling various switches, controlling the volume, so if you can take that sort of technology for eye tracking, apply it to the consumer space, you get some really interesting benefits there.
We're talking about some crazy ideas that really aren't too far away.
2020 is right around the corner. There are so many amazing innovations that are really scheduled to come online in 2020 as a lot of different technologies come out, and they'll impact each other. Mobile phones and all these different technologies kind of merge together. They're all mainstream. I want people to have the power, and I see healthcare technologies in people's hands giving them the power.
Well, now, where can we go to keep up with your predictions and upcoming trends? Where can we learn more about you?
Sure. We have a great website at futureinfocus.com. Futureinfocus.com. FUTUREINFOCUS.com.
excellent. FutureInFocus.com. This has just been so enlightening for me because I don't think many people give thought to future trends or how what's coming up actually impacts us today. So I want to thank you for sharing you and your thoughts with us, and please keep me posted on anything that you feel we should share with our listeners.
Thank you, and I do hope that you and your listeners keep up on some of the really amazing innovations that are happening all around us, and take a look a little bit further out to think about the implications today.
Absolutely. So that's FutureInFocus.com. Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, what a show today. And we only scratched the surface into the infinite possibilities of how healthcare might look in the future. I still maintain that to predict the future, we must look at what is happening right now. What problems are going to be caused due to eating pesticides? What problems are going to be caused because our scientific literature is monopolized by a few publishing companies? What happens to our private medical information now that Microsoft and Google spy on our computers and turn on our microphones? And then there is the question, what health problems will the future of healthcare create? What are the health consequences of technology creating the ability to dial up or dial down our nervous system responses? What are the health consequences of implanting a wireless chip into our bodies to administer medication? We already know that microwave radiation given off by these wireless devices damage our health. And then there's the question of living longer. Everyone thinks that technology will help us to live longer. I, for one, say no. If the current irresponsible use of technology continues, as it sounds like it is, we will not be living longer. Or if we do, it won't be in an ultimate state of health. Our bodies were not created to dial up or dial down responses, to withstand the constant barrage of man-made microwave frequencies. We cannot be nourished via pesticides. And again, you surely do not need an 8-ball or anything else to figure this out. And what about our healthcare providers? Are they immune to the onslaught of these health-damaging tricks? Perhaps the future of healthcare is there will be no healthcare. No one to deliver healthcare because we're all too sick. A dismal conversation for sure, but one I feel we need to have right now so that maybe we can turn this situation around. Hopefully, the future of healthcare is in our hands. Well, we are so out of time, but I hope you give today's program some heartfelt thought, and please share with others. It is archived on our website. Just go to speakupandstayalive.com, speakupandstayalive.com, and you can listen again or share the link with friends. And if you would like for me to visit with your group, club, business, organization, or hospital to talk about this and anything else that pertains to healthcare and hospital safety, please give me a call, 440-725-5462, 440-725-5462. And come back next week. Same time, same place, but you know me, never the same information. And I promise to lighten the mood. Or maybe not. Just depends what crosses my desk this week. Until then, I hope you have a healthy and a happy week, free from evil cereal and spying computers. I am Pat Rouleau, and I am your guide to
Listen to Pat Rouleau and Speak Up and Stay Alive RadiOh. Stay safe from little-known healthcare and hospital hazards. To learn more, go to speakupandstayalive.com. That's speakupandstayalive.com.
I'm here with disturbing news about our favorite gadgets, cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, etc. Putting it bluntly, they are damaging the living cells in our bodies and killing many of us prematurely. I'm Dr. Martin Blank from the Department of Physiology and Cellular Biophysics at Columbia University. It is distressing for me and more than 160 colleagues who today are petitioning the United Nations requesting that they address this problem. We are scientists and engineers, and I am here to tell you we have created something that is harming us, and it is getting out of control. Before Edison's light bulb, there was very little electromagnetic radiation in our environment. The levels today are very many times higher than natural background levels and are growing rapidly because of all the new devices that emit this radiation. An example that a lot of us have in our pockets right now is the cell phone. One study shows that as cell phone usage has spread widely, the incidence of fatal brain cancer in younger people has more than tripled. We are putting cellular antennas on residential buildings and on top of hospitals where people are trying to get well. Wireless utility meters and cell towers are blanketing our neighborhoods with radiation. It's particularly frightening that radiation from our telecommunication and power line technology is damaging the DNA in our cells. It is clear to many biologists that this can account for the rising cancer rates. Future generations, our children, are at risk. These biologists and scientists are not being heard on the committees that set safety standards. The biological facts are being ignored, and as a result, the safety limits are much too high. They are not protective. More protection will probably result from full disclosure of possible conflicts of interest between regulators and industry. Rising exposure to electromagnetic radiation is a global problem. The World Health Organization and international standard-setting bodies are not acting to protect the public's health and well-being. International exposure guidelines for electromagnetic fields must be strengthened to reflect the reality of their impact on our bodies, and in particular, on our DNA. Although we are still in the midst of a great technological transformation, the time to deal with the harmful biological and health effects is long overdue. We are really all part of a large biological experiment without our informed consent. To protect our children, ourselves, and our ecosystem, we must reduce exposure by establishing more protective guidelines. And so today, scientists from around the world are submitting an appeal to the United Nations, its member states, and the World Health Organization to provide leadership in dealing with this emerging public health crisis.